Hi there. Today's topic, questions in English. Quite a problematic topic, I would say, because so much is happening when we try to create questions in English. On top of that, we have different types of questions, like question tags. We talked about them last time. We have indirect questions. We have questions with prepositions. We have questions in passive voice. So there is a lot going on. Of course, we also need to know which tense to use, how to create questions in a given tense. Should we use operators? Should we use inversions? So, like I've said, there is a lot to be focused on, and hence the difficulty. That's why learners very often struggle with asking questions in English. But let's face it, it's crucial, because if you want to hold a very smooth conversation in English, it's really worth being able asking these questions spontaneously and naturally without thinking which tense to use, which operator to use, which inversion to use, and which preposition to choose. So today, questions with prepositions. Let's have a look at them. Before we start, before we move on, let me ask you a question. What's wrong with these questions? Have a look at them. About what are they talking? What's wrong? How would you correct this sentence? In a minute, I'm going to show you the answer, but I want you to say it aloud. What's wrong with this question? Another one. With who did you go there? Can you spot their mistake? Another one. On what are you working? And for who is this gift? So now, where is the problem here? Let's have a look at it. Well, you have to remember that in English, as opposed to the Polish language, compared to the Polish language, prepositions are placed at the end of a question compared to the Polish language. So in general, whenever we have these collocations like verb plus preposition, talk about, go with, work on, take care of, you can't really split these collocations, right? You have to combine the verb and preposition together, and that's why prepositions will be used at the end of a question, not at the beginning. So coming back to the incorrect questions we've just discussed, these are the correct versions. So have a look, preposition at the end. So we can't say about what are they talking, but what are they talking about? Another one. Who did you go there with? So you can't say with who did you go there, but who did you go there with? You see, it's very smooth. Who did you go there with? Of course, now you might ask me a question. Okay, Asha, but what about whom? And now the thing with whom, correct, you could actually use the preposition at the beginning with whom, and the sentence, the question would sound as follows. With whom did you go there? With whom did you go there? But to tell you the truth, I think that native speakers are slowly giving up on this whom word. That's why if I were you, I would just choose this version, preposition at the end. So what, who, this is usually how the question will start, and then preposition at the end next to the verb. Okay, so what are they talking about? Who did you go there with? A few more. What are you working on? What are you working on? And actually, if you compare the Polish translation, you see the problem is that in the Polish language, we actually place the preposition at the beginning. Nad czym pracujecie? O czym rozmawiacie? So I think that's why we very often want to add this preposition at the beginning of a question, but well, we have to remember that these two languages differ, and in English, preposition is placed at the end. More examples. Who is this gift for? So not for who, like in Polish we have dla kogo. In English, who is this gift for? Repeat after me. Who is this gift for? What are you working on? What are you working on? And I'm actually linking this verb and preposition, working on. Who is this gift for? Who is this gift for? One more. Who did you send it to? Who did you send it to? Send it to. So you see the intonation is rising. Who is this gift for? What are you working on? Who did you send it to? Sounds much more natural, doesn't it? So of course I'm not here to teach you which tense to use, how to create these questions, because this class is only about questions with prepositions. However, I just wanted to show you this rule because I can very often hear this mistake during my classes that people place these prepositions at the beginning, but they should really place them at the end of a question. So that's it when it comes to this small theory part. Now I would like to just get straight to the point. I would like us to practice a bit. So I've prepared some 10 sentences, 10 questions actually, to be translated from the Polish language into the English language. Questions with prepositions, but of course you will have to decide which tense to use. You will also need to use operators and inversions in these questions. So I hope you're ready. Let's kick off, shall we? Number one, try to translate this question. Of course, if you need more time, just stop the video, think about the answer, say it aloud, and then continue with the video. First, you need to ask yourself a question, okay, which tense is it gonna be? O czym rozmawialiście wczoraj? That will be past simple. O czym rozmawialiście przed chwilą? That will be present perfect and also continuous because it's a longer activity. So let's check the answer. What have you been talking about? What have you been talking about? Why? Because imagine you've just entered the room and you can see that your colleagues have just been talking about something, but then when you entered, they suddenly stopped talking and you're asking them, okay, what have you been talking about? What have you been talking about? Have you been talking about me? Okay, so everything is kind of happening now, not yesterday. That's why we will use present perfect continuous tense here. But the most important thing, preposition at the end. Next sentence, ready? Try to translate this question. Firstly, try to think, which tense is it? Let me give you a tip. Last year, last week, last month, last year, the past, so we will use past simple. Then you have to ask yourself, okay, so I need an operator, right, in the past simple tense. So the question will be, who did you cooperate with last year? Who did you cooperate with last year? Who did you cooperate with last year? Again, cooperate with, it's a collocation, you can't split it. So preposition almost at the end because last year is at the end. Next one. Stop the video and try to translate this one. And now let's have a look at the answer. What is Jim responsible for? So actually this is just to be, right? It's not a tense, it's just to be. So what is Jim responsible for? I have to tell you that I've noticed very often people have a problem with creating questions for she, he, it. So we very often don't struggle when creating a question with you, like what are you responsible for? But then whenever we want to create a question for he or Jim in this case, then it kind of doesn't come naturally, and that's why I believe it's worth practicing questions like that to make them more automatic simply. So what is Jim responsible for? Responsible for. You can't split this collocation, preposition at the end. Number 4, have a look at this one. Again, we have this to be here in the past, so that should be quite easy, I think. What was the meeting about? What was the meeting about? Of course, you can repeat after me to practice some intonation. What was the meeting about? Rising intonation, again, preposition at the end, inversion. What was the meeting about? Number 5. How would you translate this one? Again, try to think which tense it is. Here we are talking about some general thing, generally, right? So we will use present simple. Then you have to ask yourself, okay, so what kind of operator will I use with the present simple tense? Do or does, right? So then, let's have a look. What does it depend on? What does it depend on? So you see, you also need to know this correct collocation, depend on and not depend from, for example. So that's yet another layer of this kind of complexity of when it comes to creating questions, right? So what does it depend on? You have to be careful here because very often people skip this operator. So they say what it depends on. But this is not a question. Remember, questions in English are created by means of operators, did, do, does, or inversions, like what are you working on? What is she working on? Okay, so you can't skip this operator here. What does it depend on? Depend on. Okay, number 6. This one is a bit tricky. Why? I will tell you right away. This is actually a question in passive voice. Strona bierna. So another layer of complexity in English. Try to create it. I can give you a tip that you can firstly create a normal positive sentence like raport został napisany przez, and then you can try to create a question. So let's try. Raport został napisany przez. That would be the report was written, passive voice, by somebody. And now the question, who was this report written by? Preposition at the end. So we have inversion, right? The report was written, but it's a question, so was this report written? Who was this report written by? You can't say by who, okay? Who was this report written by? Again, questions in passive voice are quite tricky. I would say this is something you learn at the end because firstly you need to know how to identify tenses, how to create normal questions, how to create questions with prepositions, and then at the end you learn how to create questions using passive voice. So don't worry if you don't feel comfortable with this kind of questions, okay? Number 7. What about this one? Firstly, you can think about the collocation składać się z. I will give you a tip, consist of, and now try to create a question. Generally, so present simple, right? And what does this project consist of? What does operator this project consist of? So again, preposition at the end, we don't split this collocation consist of, right? It has to be attached, but then again, don't forget to use does. Don't skip the operator. Very common mistake. So what does this project consist of? Number 8. This is happening now. So obviously, if something is happening now, this is present continuous. So you need inversion. Let's have a look at the answer. What are you arguing about? What are you arguing about? Again, preposition at the end. So I hope you will remember this rule because it's really important that preposition is always at the end. So what are you arguing about? Present continuous, inversion, ing ending. Number 9. Try to think. Stop the video if you need to. Belong to, this is the collocation you will need. Generally, present simple, you need operator. Let's have a look. Who does this task belong to? Who does this task belong to? So you see, one thing is to translate this question step by step, right, when you have some time. But now imagine that you're having this spontaneous, natural conversation, or you're running a meeting and you really need to ask questions very quickly. You don't have time to think a lot, which tends to use operator, inversion, prepositions. So a lot is going on. That's why you really need to make sure you make the art of asking questions automatic in writing by translating a lot of sentences, for example, so that you could actually use them spontaneously in a conversation, okay? Questions require a bit more practice, I would say. And the last one, have a look. No tips. This sentence is for you to translate, and let's have a look. Who did you get this email from? Who did you get this email from? So preposition at the end, past simple, because we talk about some detail from the past. Very often if you talk about some details, if you ask about details, then you use past simple. Who did you get this email from? Who did you send this report to? Okay? Who did you invite? So when you ask about the details, past simple. I hope that's clear. So as you can see, not easy, right? You still need to practice. I really believe that it's not enough to just know the theory, to just learn the theory by heart, because based on my experience, most of us know the theory when it comes to present simple, present continuous, present perfect. But then the problem is with using these questions and tenses spontaneously, especially at work in this business English context. It's not so easy. So I really believe that we need to practice a lot, and we need to really automate the use of these English tenses, especially in this business English context. If you use English for work, that's why if you really feel like refreshing English tenses in this business English context, in this practical context, then I'm inviting you to join my course, my English tenses formula, where I've prepared a lot of videos for you. So you firstly learn the theory based on some practical examples, work-related examples. Then you practice by means of translating some work-related and lifestyle sentences. So that helps you automate the use of these tenses. Then you revise some ready-made sentences in the Quizlet application to make the structure of these tenses automatic, to memorize questions so that you could use them again spontaneously in a conversation. And then there are a lot of further exercises waiting for you in the ebook, in the workbook, because I believe that you need to practice, and once again practice to be able to once again actively and spontaneously use these questions and tenses while speaking during business meetings, for example. So if you're interested, if you'd like to once and for all understand these English tenses in this practical context, then check out my video course, Czasy angielskie w Business English. You can find the link below this video. And now, also remember that below this video you will find the PDF with the notes from today's class, and also some sentence translation, so there will be more questions with prepositions for you to be translated so that you could practice a bit more. I hope you've enjoyed this class. Let me know if it's clear now, questions with prepositions, and see you next time. Cheers!